Okay, it's May 8th, the Policy Review Committee. In attendance here is Frank Sermonaro, Dr. Otto,
Monica Hamill,
Mark Boyer,
Bill McEmoyle,
and Mr. Andrew Basil's in the background for the moment.
Okay.
And Connor Kurtz is on the phone.
And Connor Coates. And would you like to begin?
Bill, I'm going to let you do most of the talking, because
Okay.
the more I talk, the more I hag.
Okay, well, we have some old business that we're going to start with, and we're going to start with the charter school, the AG 127, establishing a fee for classes, and Mark is here to go over what the business office worked up. So I'll turn it over to Mark Boyer.
I actually have a handout.
And a PowerPoint. Connor, he emailed you that. I don't know if you got it.
You did.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Thank you for emailing it to me.
What's on the overhead is exactly the handout that you have. I just wanted to put it up here so it would be a little bit more
Well, in case the public came, too.
correct. Essentially what we have is, what I did was I took the current budget and I just basically split it out for high school, middle school, elementary, transportation, and athletics. So I sliced and diced it. I actually broke each category for high school, middle school, and elementary down between regular ed and special ed, because the costs associated are a little different. To kind of skip over the minutia right now, and if we scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can see a net budget per student. It's basically on the bottom of the first page. It's about 4 lines up.
7865.
That's correct.
Is that the first number?
That's what it comes down to. Essentially what I did is I took the expenditures, I subtracted off all the reimbursable revenue to come down to a net budget per student, and that's the current population of regular ed or special ed per school divided into the net total. So you can see that for one student to attend Daniel Boone in the high school for regular ed is $7,865.64. I then took the total credits to graduate in 4 years, and I averaged it in 4 years, and it came out to 6.16. I took the 6.16 credit per year into the $7,865 to come up with a cost per credit of $1,276.37 for a regular ed high school student.
Said another way, if a kid came here and wanted to take math, we would withhold or bill the cyber charter that amount.
Okay. For middle school, I took essentially the periods in a day. So I assumed there are 8 classes that the child would take a year, and just divided the 8 into once again, the net budget per student to come up with $1,035.04 for a regular ed student. And then for elementary, we essentially did classes or subject area, which was about 6 per day. So we took the 6 into the 7,680, and we got $1,280.10. Transportation I left as per student. So you can see that if you go up to the 4th line again, from the bottom, the $246 is for essentially the cost per transportation of any Daniel Boone area student going to Daniel Boone school. On the next column, that's the non-pubs and essentially special education transportation, which is $2,573 per student. And then for athletics, I broke it out by high school and middle school. The high school came to $629.65, and then the middle school came at $68.44. And that was based on current participation in sports for the year.
Where are those numbers on the spreadsheet?
You go
It's,
four
you go
lines
down
up from the bottom.
So the fourth line from the bottom.
On the second page?
First page.
First page.
First page.
Net, if you look at net budget per student, like the fourth or fifth one up from the bottom.
It's the last line that goes all the way across.
7865 is the first number.
Yes, okay.
Divided by the number of credits for a high school
Mm-hmm.
equals cost per credit.
So you're saying the cost per credit in the high school is $629?
No, it's $1,276.
Credit meaning a class.
But for the whole year or just for that one semester?
It would be for the whole year.
The entire year?
You said 1,000, Frank?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Here,
This is line here, the cost per credit.
Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry. Now I'm down the bottom. All right. Sorry.
It's okay.
$1,200 for high school.
I kind of skipped the minutia of how I derived that number. If you would like me to go through it, I can. It's not a problem. That I can tell you that number is the entire budget. So all the debt service, all the administrative overhead, all the way down to the teacher salaries, the supplies are included in this number.
All our facilities costs included in
All
here?
the facilities cost, the entire current budget. So and I broke out the debt service according to the building or the construction project that it was allocated to. So for instance, the stadium costs, that got allocated to that. Part of it got allocated to athletics, and part of it got allocated to high school because high school also uses it for gym and whatnot. If the APC got allocated to the elementary. So I try to be as...
Well, hold it. Back up with 1 second.
Yes.
You said the cost for the stadium. Where is that in the spreadsheet you're showing me?
Okay, if you...
Is that the 2011 bond debt service?
I believe it is.
Purchased.
Nope, actually it's the 2000, I'm sorry, it's the
2009?
Yes. 2008. 2008 principal and interest, you are
Okay,
across.
so remember, 2008 was a complete refinance. It was like a $58 million bond refinance,
That's correct.
of which only 13 million or 12 million, 3 million, 5,
3 million.
5.6, 4.6 million went towards the stadium.
That's correct. I took that portion.
You took that portion out of
Yes.
this debt service number, and now where is that showing up on here?
It's, the expense part would be, well, remember this would just be the principal and interest payment that would be due for that year. So it would not be the entire debt service. Okay, so it would just be what would be owed for that year. So it would be to the right under athletics, under high school, and then middle school.
It's the 34,000.
Yes.
Is there anything that you've taken out and left out? For example, the $9 million we used to renovate APC.
That got allocated to elementary.
Okay.
I can actually show you the bond schedule if you'd like to see it. This is the schedule I used. I don't have a handout for it, so you have to look up here. I took each bond issue and then also the subsidy. So the subsidy we get back from the state, I subtracted off. That would be in the reimbursement portion on your sheet, which is the middle section. So I broke out the project amount, APC Stadium, and then the other, which was essentially some projects in refinancing. And I allocated it based upon population. So I came up with percentage. And then the same with the stadium usage was a percentage of high school versus athletics. Essentially derived down to the numbers you see on the sheet there. So,
I like that.
and I did that for each issue, bond issue.
So let's without getting into this becoming a finance meeting, let's stay on the policy. So what are we reviewing here?
What I would
For
suggest
this-
you put into the policy is a statement that says students will be charged an annual or a fee based on an annual computation by the business department using this formula.
What's the formula we're suggesting here? Is it cost per credit?
It depends, right? If it's a high school, middle school, or elementary school. It's either
Yeah,
cost
it
per
would be-
credit,
the factors
cost
would be
per-
either credits per year, periods per year, or classes per year. You factored that into,
or if it's athletics
but I mean,
Or
that,
transportation.
or transportation.
that saves the need from having to put in a spreadsheet formula into the policy.
How many, is this one credit, one class?
Yes, the high school.
Did you base it on the class meeting every day of the cycle all year long?
All I did was base it on the number of credits that it took for one student to graduate in 4 years. So I think the whole number of recommended,
Well, for example, at the middle school, that's where, if we continue to have middle school band, that's what a lot of parents in cyber school, that's what they want. They want to take, they want their kid to be in the band. That's the example we had this year. And then that particular kid played the trombone, and there were only 3 kids in the class. So when I worked with Danielle on that, the cost for that kid to take the trombone lessons, which didn't meet every day of the cycle, but it met like a period over a 2-cycle period, it met like 5 times. It actually met more than band. So the price for that was almost $1,200. And as I mentioned at an earlier meeting, they refused to pay that. They liked the band price, which was only $59, but they said, well, since he isn't getting trombone lessons, we don't want the band either. So they didn't do either. So that's why I'm just bringing it up. I mean, I don't know if the goal is to try to get them to want to take the course, or just give them the real numbers. This is what it really costs us for this particular course at the middle school or high school, because I don't, in that
Well,
example.
If I'm understanding this correctly, you're telling me, if I'm looking at this elementary band, I assume would be under elementary regular ed, correct?
yes,
So we could theoretically say that's costing us $1,200 per credit?
in a high-level theory, yes, because I didn't break out the specifics down to this is what the band teacher or music
Is that
teacher
per
costs.
student, or is that,
It's based on per student, you know, number of
so it's
enrollments.
per credit per student? So that number's a little diluted just because you've got more students in that.
Correct. So if you wanted to just have band, you would have to probably change this model a little bit because it's this is more high level.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Instead of drilling up, I drill
Yeah.
down, but to a point. So yeah, if you wanted to be more specific, like actually take the band and then kind of configure the overhead, like the admin overhead and all the bond issuance.
No, I think the bigger picture sort of look at makes it a lot easier for people to understand and apply a fee, in my opinion. I mean, otherwise we're going to the very granular
Right.
stage of saying, well, band costs $180,000 and you've got 70 kids who participate. We're going to divide. Now we add in your overhead, and now we're going to divide that number by 70, and you're going to get a much higher number. And you have to do that for every single class or every single sport. It gets to be too cumbersome, which is what you were going through. I think this is a much better approach where you just say, hey, look, it's costing us $630 per sport per kid to run high school sports. So you want to play a sport at the high school, you got to pay $630. That's easy. I don't know, what do you think, Frank?
I like it. I like the model. I think it's, you can sit here and, reference it, when it's very detailed as far as, where the numbers are coming from, if we need to explain it in the future.
And I think if you got any
if you
pushback
need
from
to change
anybody
it.
as to how you computed it, I think some very reasonable assumptions were made about how to come up with a price.
Yeah.
It's defendable.
is just for cyber school, right? Kids-
If a kid from cyber school
School too, is it?
or charter school
Charter school.
wants to come here and take something for whatever reason, that they just didn't feel like taking it, and the state has said if that happens, we are allowed to charge them.
So when do you come up with this? You come up at the beginning of the fiscal year every year? When does this chart get?
Probably, right, I could probably have it done right when the budget is adopted,
Okay.
because essentially that's what I did, I just tore apart the budget.
Don't you have to wait until September until you
Well,
know the
for
number of
enrollment,
students and all that?
Well, that could be a decision point. Do we want to use prior year's enrollment, or do we want to use what we think is the
Okay.
current year enrollment? And we can actually even project the enrollment if you wanted to based upon, well, we know what kindergarten's coming in at, this is who's graduating, you could actually project. That's kind of subjective. It'd be relatively simple to do,
Mhm.
that part. So yeah, it would be based upon what the board recommends that they would like to use. I just used what the current is right now.
Yeah.
Well, would the
Yeah.
numbers really change that much in the high school area? Isn't it, our low enrollment is in the elementary school area? So these should stay relatively the same.
Yeah, I mean, even if you add one or two kids, it's not going to make that much of a
Right,
difference.
right.
You're talking.
I think you just set a
$100.
price once you get that
Yeah.
number and go with
Well,
it.
how many
Yeah,
times-
I'm just talking specifically, I'm not getting into the formulas.
Right.
I'm getting into the policy. I just think we just need to define,
As of
in the
enrollment-
policy, at
as
what
of-
date does this get, renewed?
Well, we should say enrollment as of September 1st, when the school year starts. That's
Well,
the
but what if
enrollment
they
number
want to
you use.
enroll in something in August?
Right.
Then September's too late. So really, this
I think
needs to
you
be done
I-
in July, so that if people want to enroll, they have an opportunity to see what the cost is, see what the availability is, everything's ready for them, and then they start up in August.
Yeah, you could always amend it in
Okay.
September if something, if there's a dramatic
Price
change.
adjust.
Like you said, you can probably take a really close guess.
Yeah.
But if there is some change in September, we could always amend it in September, but still honor the people who signed up in
When do
August
people
or
usually call to
When
take
do
the
they
classes
enroll?
for the fall?
In mid-August.
Mid-August.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
summertime request.
They procrastinate till mid-August. They already know, but they usually wait till right before
So,
school starts.
and you guys usually have projections as of what, August 1st? Is it what the enrollment's going to be in September?
We
School
can
starts?
technically, when you see your June enrollment, if you take out the seniors, we know by June pretty much. You'll get a couple move-ins in the summer.
I'm just saying, so I think what Frank's alluding to is we need to have a date to put in the policy. So enrollment estimates as of August 1 will be the number you're going to use, right? And that's
Right.
what you use.
Yeah, other than that, I think it's great.
I don't think the enrollment numbers will change much after that.
It did for purposes of this. It's
For
not going
this,
to
it's
affect
not
the cost
right.
at all.
And then I think we just need to find a place to insert a statement as to this is what we're going to do in this number 127 here. Haven't worked out the details of how to actually word that yet, pending what you thought of this.
I think, well, look, I think you did a good job with it. This is sort of exactly where I think we were driving the bus. And, it's helpful in a lot of other applications too, I think. So,
I agree. I like it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Nice, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments on 127?
Well, just
Connor on the phone?
Yes.
we'll put together a statement that gets inserted in.
Right.
I actually don't think we should put it in the AG. I would rather put it in the policy. So we'll have to pull the policy back out and we'll bring it forward as a
Okay.
follow-up.
Okay.
Is this the entire policy we're talking about right now? I have to open it up really quickly.
Well, you actually were given the AG.
Okay, this is 127 we're talking about?
Yes.
All right, I just had a question or a comment about, on page 3, under definitions, after submission is the title, I don't know what you want to call it, then item F. The district also may provide a copy of the application to employee organizations and the Parent-Teacher Association for their review and comment. This is referring to charter school applications, correct?
Correct.
And employee groups, is that the teachers union?
Yes, I would assume.
And yeah, that's what I would assume too. And this is not requiring us to give it to the teachers union, correct? It's just saying we have the
Well,
option.
this, Connor, that what you're reading here on 127 is actually verbatim from the charter school law.
Oh, okay.
There's
All right.
actually Act 97 or 22 of 1997 established all the regulations for charter school legislation.
And do they define in the statute what an employee organization is?
That I honestly couldn't tell you.
All right.
I could find out.
Yeah, I'm very interested in how the state defines that, because to me that just is the teacher union. But there are other
Well, it
things
could
that
also,
are out there.
it might also mean your support staff as well. Because,
Support, like a support staff union, or
Yeah,
if there are
well-
other types of employee groups.
yeah, that I don't know.
Like, I'm very interested if it's a labor thing or if it's a more educational.
I think it's more an informational thing.
All right, well, I'd be very interested in hearing about what the statute says, what it defines that is. So if you could look into that and let me know, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments for 127?
So the only thing, I guess what you're going to do here is 127, you're just going to put paragraph 6 on there,
We're gonna-
talking about fees or something.
Actually, what I'd like to do is put it in,
It's going to be in the
pull the
policy.
policy
I'm
back
looking at the
out.
policy.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So after guidelines or whatever, because it just talks about authority, delegation of responsibility, and then guidelines. I guess you're going to
Guidelines would be, it would go under as an additional guideline,
Right,
as the
okay.
fact that we'll charge a fee. So we'll add a fee statement.
All right.
Policy in AG 214.
Okay. I'm not computer proficient like Mark, so I just made a chart up. You were talking about a chart for the health, student records. Well, health records are one of them on mine.
Thank you.
And if you remember, I handed this out earlier, and I don't know if you have it with you tonight, so I made some more copies. Because I do have a question about one of them. So I just put in there, all these could change, but I followed the format for Dr. Otto and I looked at the policy administrative guidelines 800.1, which is a whole records elimination, and at the bottom of one of the pages, it even has student records, and it says C, refer to student records plan. So this whole 800.1, which was adopted in September 24th, 2012, is what I modeled this chart off of. So that, just so you know where it's coming from. So I use the same terminology that's in the 800.1. For example, you see the record format.
What does A stand for?
ABC.
In the 800 policy,
Oh,
it
paper.
defines all
I
of
see.
them. And it also defines the numbers on a later.
We tried to use the same disposal
I get it.
codes.
So we would
and
use, I'm
code
using
it the same way as,
code.
because this is really a subset of the other policy. So
No, I think it's perfect.
But and I think this will work, and I listed them all individually, like core data, everything that's listed in the other handout that I had given you before, which is printed up. It's just taking everything that's in the policy in paragraph form and making a list. Whether we want to change things, 99 is 99 years. Disposal code, I picked 2 and 4. You can see if we create a new one, we can attach these to it, or we could refer, as we said last month, we can refer to AG 800.1.
Yeah.
thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And most of them are confidential, so you can see the the one thing that you guys had mentioned to me was some of the records, like transcripts, diploma, we want to keep those for a long time. So I put 99 years on that. But I don't think it has to be permanent like some of the records on 800.1 are. It says they're permanent, and those are business office records. But I would like to draw your attention to the paragraph handout I gave you, because I have a concern about, I don't understand, maybe Dr. Otto can help me. We got this, number 3 at the bottom. Everything else is on here except number 3. It says records maintained for at least 6 years from the conclusion of the school year, during which such records were made or received by the district. And the main point is it's dealing with identified special education students. They deal with that in the policy, Dr. Otto, earlier under bullet number 2 under number 1, special education students, and you're supposed to keep it for 6 years minimum beyond the age of 21. And I'm not quite clear what the policy is meaning by, it seems to me number 3, it contradicts bullet point number 2 under number 1. So I don't know, maybe the lawyer that we got this from can explain what this is, because to me it's confusing.
Yeah, because one of them you have to hang on till they're 27. The other one you can get rid of 6 years after they're gone.
I think, yeah, and that might refer to, I don't know the legal answer to that part of it. If a kid comes here in 4th grade and then they leave, and they're 12 years old, or 8 years old, or 10 years old, do we have to hold it to they're 16?
Yeah, but I agree with Bill. He's saying that
right.
Bullet point number 2 and under number 1 and 3 are in direct contradicting.
Did we get this from Faust?
Yes.
All right. Well, if you're okay with the chart, that whole concept, we can go back and get that part ironed out.
So is the chart going into the AG or is it going into the policy?
I would like to make the chart consistent with what we did. Bill, where is it in 800? Because I think whatever we do, we should. Is it part of the AG?
I'm looking for the
Look,
page
here it
1.
is. You just gave it to me. It's part of the AG.
Right. So this would become part of the AG.
214 AG.
Actually, you could put it in both because it is actually referenced in. It could be. I think it could exist in 2 places because it says it refers to it there. It could be an attachment to 800 because you can do that with policies and AGs. You can actually put 2 different numbers on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would recommend. Because it also is part of our student records policy. It's part of records in general, and then student records would be a subset.
At the bottom of page 6 of this 800 AG, student records, refer to student records plan. Dr. Otto is suggesting we just add it there. So it's in 2 places, right?
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt that. You just got to remember that it's in 2 places.
Then
So
this
you change
guideline
one.
would have to come back.
Right.
Don't change it.
Right. That might be redundant, but I think that, you
Or
know.
just put where it is.
Just a reference
Oh, we
to
could
it.
do that then,
Policy
too.
and-
All right.
AG.
Right. No, that's true. That's probably a more efficient way
Because
to
that
do it.
way, if you ever change it, you have to remember to go to 800 and
Right.
change it as well.
Right.
So-
No, that's probably a better idea. All right.
so the
We'll
chart-
minus that number 3 issue.
Yep. That looks good to
If
me.
you're okay with that, we'll move that forward.
I think you guys. I think it makes it a lot easier for somebody who's figure out. Okay, well, this
Absolutely.
is what we got to do to dispose of these things.
Well, no, that was a good. Whoever made that suggestion, that was a good idea. Instead of keeping it in a script format.
That was impossible to understand when you're trying to read through. Okay.
Next one, graduation requirements. That's Dr. Otto is going to speak to that, I think, to the Curriculum and Instruction Committee.
Well, this is just the Curriculum Instruction Committee never really got to this. But if we're going to make any changes, and really that's my purpose of bringing it forward, it would be through the through the board process that we would actually change our graduation requirements.
Does it need to be changed?
Well, I think the
Refresh
issue
me
that
on
we
this. 'Cause I remember us
No, it
talking about
doesn't, no.
losing a credit somewhere or something.
Well, I think the issue that we were having was,
Andrew can speak to this.
as a board, we were talking about, well, what can we cut or can't cut?
Right.
And you can't cut certain things if they're part of the requirements for graduation.
Right.
And our requirements for graduation exceed those of the state. So obviously, we raised the bar for ourselves, and it's part of our policy, and it's in our strategic plan and all that kind of stuff. And so one of the issues that we wrestled for the last 2 years was, do you change the policy? You can lower the standard, I suppose, to whatever meets the state standard. Encourage your kids to do more, or better, but if the time ever comes when, as a board, you need to make some tough decisions, you have the flexibility then to do so. Not saying that you would, but you at least have the opportunity.
I just remember in my day, and Bill can speak to it, you have two former principals here in the room, most students far exceeded. I mean, there were some, I remember juniors having, by the time they were junior, they already exceeded the requirement. And then senior year becomes kind of come back and sit around time, except for those kids that are, looking to pad for a college transcript. Bill, you can
Well, they have
chime
to
in on
come,
that.
they have to get the fourth English credit, the fourth social studies credit. At least in our district, it's 4 English, 4 social studies, 4 math, and 3 sciences. So they have to come back, and I had, I think the board asked me a year ago to look at that. 70% of the kids could, if they didn't have to take credits in order to satisfy their college, because colleges want to see that they're still taking the same degree of difficulty and a full course load in their senior year that they took in their other high school years. But let's say the colleges didn't care about that. 70% of them would only have to take their 4th credit of English, their 4th credit of social studies, and their 4th credit of math, and phys ed. So really, they would have half a day. But, I mean, most of their parents are going to want them to have a full load because that's what the colleges are looking at. What did you sign up for? They're all getting accepted in the fall of their senior year. And so it's very competitive, even at the state schools. And they want to see that they're challenging themselves and taking a full load. If somebody's sloughed off, they're not going to be as competitive. At least that's how it is now with the colleges.
But actually, I think we need to, now that- as I look at this, we need to reflect what they're doing with Keystone exams. That's not even in here.
In the graduation requirements.
Yep. Because this reflects the old PSSA, which we don't do at the high school level anymore. So that's another part of this that's going to need to be revised. But that's an easy fix. I think the issue that the board wants to, I think, be able to manipulate is the actual total number of credits that a kid needs to graduate.
Or specifically going in here and saying, okay, well, look, do you need
Sure,
four of the language arts as opposed to 3? Or, driver education, is that a critical thing in terms of graduation? And it could just be that those little things give this board, or future boards, something that, hey, look, if we have to make cuts in terms of administrative, or in terms of curriculum, we have a place to go to. Now we don't have a place to go to. If you got that 4 years in a language art, I guess you got to keep all the Spanish teachers, all the German teachers, all the French teachers, all the whatever teachers, right? Because you can't.
Oh, no, not the language arts being English, 4 years of that, but foreign language is
Sorry.
those are electives, so they need 6 electives, and if they take 2 years of Spanish, they're taking care of 2 of their 6 electives.
Gotcha.
See, now the state requirement for, just again to repeat that, for foreign language is only 4 years of a sequence of one modern language and 2 years of another. That's it. That's the state requirement. But most schools have 3, 4. Some schools might offer Chinese online or something. So most schools traditionally have always offered French, German, Spanish. That had been the traditional track. But that always exceeded the state requirement.
Do we ever fall into the situation, or how often do we fall in a situation where a student falls short of our requirements, but has exceeded the state's requirement for number of credits for
It's
graduation?
very rare. It's usually because they transferred here from another school district and they missed one of the ninth grade courses that all our ninth graders take. So you'll see consumer science when they take it in ninth grade, and that every school district doesn't require that. So they'll come and they're coming in and they're a senior. I waived it. I didn't want to put them in with ninth graders.
Right.
So I didn't require them to take it because I was just asking for trouble putting them in with those young kids in a food class every day.
Right.
So that's where that happens.
So our task at hand here in the policy committee on this right now is what?
Well, I would say, we didn't, my question would be, do you want to really get this to the full board for debate and deliberation, or take this back to curriculum and instruction?
I don't want to sit here and pick which classes or I don't think that's the job of the policy committee, sit there and say, well, you need X number of credits of this versus that. I think that's a decision the administration helps the curriculum and instruction committee reach, and then they make a recommendation to us. I think the push from the board, as I recall it, was, if the state requirement is, if you added it all up, was 21 credits, and ours is 24.65, is there some stuff in ours that we should be looking at that you could reduce?
Right.
As part of our policy, not necessarily what we're encouraging, but at least then, as a board, if you said, look, times are tough, we got to get rid of something.
Right.
You don't have this hamstringing you in making those types of decisions.
Okay. Well, then we'll take this.
Well, then
back
our
to-
policy would read, if we agree to change it, that it matches that of the state. So that if the state ever changes, you don't have to go off and change this policy.
Right.
You're just following along with the state.
Right. Well, you would want to do at least a minimum, and then, but I still think you want to determine for your students, because at the end of the day, what the translation of this is what does it mean to walk across that stage and you get a Daniel Boone diploma? That's what really this document.
Well, if you want, that sounds all good and everything, but I would like to know if we're going to go down that path. I would like to know just from a financial perspective, how much more money is it costing us for these additional credits versus if we just followed the state's minimum credits?
Yeah, I guess we could. You could probably
You'd start opening up
No, I think you
can
could.
of worms there. But
Well, if you use Mr. Boyer,
Mark has a formula.
right there.
I don't know what the state's requirement. I don't know what the number of credits are for a state, but you'd be able to just multiply it by.
How much extra money are we spending by adding these credits because we want our kids to do well in college?
Yeah.
We're going to do well in college.
Yeah.
How many more credits do we offer in electives that aren't needed? But how many does the state require over? Because we have 6 here. How many does the state require?
I don't know. I can't answer that.
Because if it's electives that they're filling their schedules with just to have a fill up, and then some study halls.
Do you even need to have this list in the policy? This thing says for the class of 9, 10, 11. Well, we're already past this,
That's correct.
right? So you have to update this thing every
That's why
2 years.
That's what I was trying to get
If
away
you just
from.
said, hey, look, you need the graduation requirements, you need to meet the state requirements, blah, 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 and that's the end of it. Well, then we're done.
Well,
You don't need to list what it is.
You don't have to
list-
go back to this
You put
policy.
the list in an administrative guideline somewhere or in the strategic, I don't know where it is, but
Right.
it's something that can be edited from one year to the next. That we're not, again, I think that addresses the issue of tying the board's hands, because if a board in 14, 15 says, look, 15, 16 is going to be a bad year, we need to amend the administrative guidelines so we can eliminate some curriculum, then board 14, 15 can do that. They don't have to go back here and change the policy and change the, I don't know what, to make that happen. But
Well, I just wanted to get this in front of you guys first,
Yeah,
the direction
okay.
of where to go with it. So there was no other real task tonight, so we'll take it back to the curriculum instruction and get it up to speed with what the state
I'm kind of confused why the
requires.
curriculum hasn't had this. I thought this was brought up a long time ago about them going through this. Walt sat there and said they're doing it every month, and now it's back on our plate. I just don't know why they haven't looked at this prior to May.
I think what goes back to the curriculum and instruction is what those credits are.
Right.
I think it's the full board that makes the decision. Do we modify our graduation requirements to
correct.
be that of the states. I think that's a board discussion and get it over with. And then once you get it over with, it's the curriculum instruction's job to say, well, go figure out what those credits are. You know, what is it? I don't think they go off and debate this, you know, just as another committee, whether or not we keep it at the level it is now or if we drop it down to the state level. I just think that's a board thing in my mind.
I would agree with that.
So we all clear? What are we doing?
I think what you just said was, you know, the board.
No, it's pretty
This
clear.
committee is going to make a recommendation to the board that this policy is modified to reflect whatever the state's requirements are, and then it's up to curriculum instruction or the administration then to say, okay, well, this is what those credits are
Right.
going to entail.
Got it,
Is
okay.
it 4 years of a language? Is it 3 years of a language? Is it?
Because, again, just to go back, there's nothing in this policy that talks about these Keystone exams that just started. And they were put upon us, and they are part of graduation now.
Right.
So that's not even reflected in
But I
there.
think if you have what Frank suggested is, you know, graduation requirements are those that are, you know, mandated by the state. That includes Keystone
Correct.
exams automatically by
Right.
default.
By
right?
default, you're right.
Okay. So we'll bring that to the board.
Yeah, that doesn't need to come to the board right now.
Okay.
We'll take that back and start tasking that out.
The next old business is,
It used to be 21 credits. I'm looking at 1990s.
it did.
Yeah.
Kept getting pushed up as colleges wanted kids to
Well,
have
and it's
those
different
credits.
things too. So, humanities. I mean, like, all right.
Well,
Sorry. Didn't mean
following
to.
the whole report,
okay.
The Nation
Yeah,
at
go ahead.
Risk,
So-
it was across the country, school districts were supposed to increase standards, and that's what everybody did. At any rate,
So-
going on to the next one.
Special ed?
Special ed related policies, 233, 34, 35, and 36. These were given to Shelley Mikowski and who's the special ed lawyer she sent them to? I forget. But-
Andy Faust's firm,
Andy
Tom
Faust.
Warner.
So they're recommending that we adopt the policies that they submitted to us. They're pretty close to what we already had. There's some minor wording changes, and they want to eliminate the policy that says mental retardation defined. That's old language, and that should be eliminated. So that's from the law firm.
These
That's 233?
3, 4, and 5.
these are policies
233
that
specifically, I'm talking about.
they ripped these straight from the federal regulations to make sure we comply with all the special education rules and regulations.
Got it, okay.
So I tend not to mess with
Yeah,
what
I was
they-
going to say, who are we to?
I don't mess
debate
with
that
this. I'm pretty sure it covers us. They want to represent us if we ever get into due process, so I can't imagine they put something on paper that puts us at risk.
So we're eliminating 236 now.
And the reason that is the law was changed. We don't call students, there's no definition for that anymore.
For mental retardation.
They actually, mental retardation has been removed from the lexicon. They call students, that used to be called that, students with intellectual disability. Okay.
Okay, moving on to psychotropic drug use policy in AG 232. Checking with the nurse, checking with her again. At a prior meeting, I had already checked with her. She said these policies were outdated and we needed to get rid of them, the AG and the policy. Then at the meeting was discussed, and Dr. Otto felt that there was a legal requirement that the policy should be kept. So I just emailed Bonnie Ebling again, and she's just concerned that if any staff recommends a medical exam, that the district could possibly be liable for the cost of that exam. And no staff member should be diagnosing or suggesting that their parent get a diagnosis for their kid. So that is what her issue is, and she still recommends getting rid of the administrative guideline, but the wording in the policy, I think it says they shouldn't recommend that they take psychotropic drugs, but they shouldn't recommend that they even get, your child needs to be diagnosed. I mean, that's what her concern was, Dr. Otto.
Mm-hmm. Which line did she have a concern with?
She didn't say the line specifically, so
Because I'm looking at the first line on the AG, and it says pretty clear there.
In the first paragraph, it says, however, members of the professional staff, including nurses, district medical advisor, may recommend that a student be evaluated by an appropriate medical practitioner.
And
That's what she's concerned with, that the district could be held liable for the cost of that.
What does Brian think? Has he been consulting on this one yet? Maybe he's got a suggestion.
Yeah, Bill, given that, let's put this one on hold. It's not a,
Okay.
I think.
Okay. So we get.
For that purpose, I don't want to I don't want to contradict a school nurse. I think they tend to have a little.
Well, she's also not an attorney, so
Exactly.
we probably want Brian to opine on, this whole idea.
Well, that whole line 8, I want to know what the line 8 then, if that's her concern, what Brian would have to say about that.
Under new business, really a lot of these, and we're doing, 3 categories: administrator, professional, and classified. So they're not all numbered the same, but they're categorized by topic.
The next, just to preface for the benefit of whoever might listen to the tape, the next 3 series of policies, 3, 4, and 500s, are all personnel policies. So that's kind of where we've left. First was board, then we were in program, then we were in student, now we're in personnel policies. Once we get done with this series, we'll be headed toward finance, then community and operations and all. You can see how they're kind of classified into clumps. These have to do with all the employees of the district. So that's going to be the emphasis on what you see in these.
Now, there's really, I checked numerous districts and all of our policies. There hasn't been a change in theirs, and our wording is, there's no change in state code, which is why these aren't changing.
I thought the superintendent changed.
That's the only one.
Didn't the business manager definition of business manager position change also with the state, or requirements in terms of?
I'm not aware of it.
That I don't think so. It depends if you hire your business manager as a commissioned officer or not. What changed at the state level was the definition of a commissioned officer, and there are only 4 people that can be hired as commissioned officers, and that is superintendent, assistant superintendent, personnel manager, and a business manager, although the only one that you're actually required to make a commissioned officer is the superintendent. A board has the ability to hire an assistant to the superintendent, then they go into Act 93. They also have the ability to hire a personnel director that is not a commissioned officer, just director of personnel. So that's the way the law is written now. And the same thing with business manager. If you decide to hire a business manager that way, it's at your discretion. I've seen it done both ways in districts that I've been in.
And from what I could see in the 4 or 5 districts I checked with, will be the first one that will have the new superintendent policy. Because some of them reviewed theirs more recently than us. We don't even have dates on ours.
1989.
They haven't changed it.
Mine says 5.289.
Yeah, I have one that says 89. Some of them don't have dates.
Yeah.
But all of these, in every category, there hasn't, except for the superintendent, that from what I can see, they haven't changed. And I wasn't aware of that until Dr. Otto told me that the superintendent one.
That changed last year, wasn't it, with the law?
Yes, the school code changed.
Right. So which one are we looking at first? Creating a position?
301.
301.
301, 401, 501. What we decided to do here was,
Yeah, I like
since
that.
the wording is the same, they're parallel policies. There's no
Yeah.
sense waiting until we get to the 500s.
Right. So, one's for administrative, one's for professional, and one's for classified.
And then you can see the gradations of differences in the expectations for each group. They're not exact, they're not identical, but it really leaves, again, it's all board. You have the authority in all of these. For example, one of the things that you'll note in 301 is the initial salary or salary range for a new position shall be determined by the board. You won't see that in the teaching positions because that's done through the contract.
Okay. I mean, I don't have any issue with the language and.
They're kind of just a general guideline for the district in terms of, obviously, no positions being created in practical sense without the board, and that's pretty much what this says. And Bill, these not all of these have AGs either. Do
No,
they?
most of them don't.
Most of them don't. This is it.
Whatever I put on the agenda, if it doesn't have an AG on there, there isn't one.
If these are fine, we'll just send them through to Brian.
They're fine with
stamp
me.
them,
Is
and-
anyone else still reviewing? Still reviewing?
I read them.
Andrew,
The only
still
other thing I
reviewing?
might add is, I don't know if operational needs, in terms of, in the exercise of its authority to create new positions, the board shall give primary consideration to the needs of the students, the operational needs of the district, and most effective management of the district. I guess that includes financial needs of the district as well.
Three- 301?
No, I see where line
It's the second
24.
paragraph, like line, on 401, it's like lines 14 through 17. You're just talking about what criteria.
That
we're
wording's in
involving.
each of them.
Okay.
And
Well,
I don't
401's
really-
more professional staff, right? Financial would be
Yeah,
more
401 's
301.
professional staff.
Three is your administrative,
Right.
Act 93. 401 is your, quote, DBEA or teaching. And 501 is everybody else.
Right.
So, Andrew.
That stuck out to me as well when I was reading through the policies. It seems like there should be some wording giving financial consideration a higher position in that.
Or at least a consideration. I don't think it's ranked in order. It's saying these three things, but it doesn't list finances as being a consideration.
Well, then why don't we edit it this way? If I'm reading in 301, we can use this as a model. In the exercise of its authority to create new positions, the board shall give consideration to not primary, just take out that, give consideration to the most effective management of the affairs of the district, comma, the operational needs of the district, comma, and the financial needs of the district, period.
Or financial,
Or
not
and
needs, financial.
Considerations?
No, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah. Restraints, constraints,
Yeah.
financial constraints of the district.
That makes sense.
Or you just list them as, the board shall give consideration to the needs of the student, the operational, fiscal, and managerial requirements of the district as well, or something to that effect. I mean,
Okay. Work in fiscal,
Yeah, I think it's.
rather than sit here and wordsmith it.
Consideration.
All right. Fiscal addition.
Or financial, not fiscal, right?
I think Andrew just said fiscal.
Financial, I think.
Well,
Something to that effect.
fiscal just means annual, right? Or
Yeah.
just- what does that have to do with?
Financial.
Okay.
Okay, Connor, any other comments for 301, 401, 501?
No, nothing.
Okay,
Moving on.
all right, Bill?
Okay.
Superintendent?
Well, we have, employment, 302, employment of superintendent. You can see,
That's going to have to be revised based on the new language.
okay, so we'll just put to be revised based on the new.
Well, especially, I mean, I just want to point out specifically.
You
on
haven't
page-
done anything with this yet?
No.
You're just,
No, I just
bringing it up
wanted
for
to
the
get it
first time
to you,
for- okay.
yeah, just to let you know where it's going to have to be changed.
okay.
The fourth paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, you don't appoint for a term of 3 to, it depends on a sitting superintendent that hasn't broke their tenure can be appointed to a 5-year, but any new superintendent now has to be a minimum of 3, period. They removed the 5-year.
Okay, so we'll wait.
That's
to see
just
some of
one
those.
thing.
And then there's certain requirements. I mean, now you don't need to be
Correct.
an educator. You can
Correct.
just have a master's degree
It's
in
very,
business.
there's very specific statutory language
Yeah,
now.
the
And I
requirements
think it needs to
for
be embedded in here.
right. And I think that-
Now, what you may decide to do is, under the superintendent shall, those bullets are open to your discretion.
Got it.
But
Number
I
8,
think,
relationships.
right. But if you want me to just go back and get the proper statutory language,
Yeah, I would like to start there. So you guys will bring that back with the statutory language,
Yep.
and then we can look at it at our little section and see if there's any need for any kind of revisions there.
okay?
Okay.
Next.
Okay, 303, employment of administrators. 402, professional employees. 502, classified employees. And these do have an AG that go with them.
I think what I have here on 402, the board shall approve the employment and fix the compensation for each professional employee employed by the district. It shall also fix the term of employment for other conditions that may reflect the difference between full-time and part-time. What do they mean by the term of employment?
Where are you reading that?
402, yeah,
Second paragraph.
Second paragraph, line 9. How do you define the term of employment?
My guess would be that that's related to the,
Is that the number of hours?
no, the number of, what the
Number-
contract date, what the contract year is. So in other words, if they have 187 days, I think term of employment would refer to those 187 days.
Do we need to define that somehow in here? I'm just asking the question because I don't know what that means. And then secondly, that third paragraph altogether, no teacher shall be employed who is related to any member of the board as defined in statute, unless such teacher receives the affirmative vote of the majority of all members of the board other than the member related to the applicant. Is there,
That's a statutory.
I got it,
requirement.
but we should probably add something to that about disclosure. You know, that there should be a need to disclose publicly that this is happening, and as opposed to somebody just abstaining from a vote, which has happened in the past, and things just go on.
Well, let me.
Nobody understands
No
why somebody
teacher shall
abstained.
be employed who is related to any member of, how does that work? What if the teacher came first and then the board member got elected? You fire the teacher?
No, I don't.
I mean-
I think employed means hired. If you're already here,
Shall be employed, not hired. No teacher shall be hired is what you're just saying, but
Right.
that's not what this says. It says
No,
no
you're
teacher
right.
shall be employed who is related to any member of the board.
we can get clarification from
Well,
Brian.
if you
on
think
that.
about it, if you get somebody who works here for the district, and then their spouse decides, well, I don't like the way they're being treated, I'm going to go run for the school board.
Yeah.
Something has to,
So-
there has to be some sort of trigger saying, well, wait a minute, either you can't be employed here anymore, because, you know, the rest of the board would have to say, okay,
If we already reviewed our board member policies, right? We need to double back on that. Didn't we?
No, that's got nothing to do with this. This is if you had a spouse or a child or somebody that wanted to be employed by the district while you're on the board.
yeah, but
Yeah, I
what
think
Frank
it's
is saying,
the
who
same.
comes first, chicken or egg?
Right,
It's-
right.
If my wife works for the school district, and then I decide I'm gonna run for school board,
Something's got to
all of a
give.
sudden now I'm a school board member and my wife works for the school district, and there was no approval by the majority of the board for that situation whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't think that's what this is. I think if, you know, they're getting hired because of.
Well, change, and if you just want to stick to that, then change this to hired. But somehow we have to address the other end of the coin, the other
Yeah.
side of that coin.
No, that makes sense.
But for this one, you could just say, no teacher shall be considered for employment who is related to any, unless blah, blah, blah. That would work. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, my personal opinion is there should be some sort of disclosure then prior to that.
I wrote down a
employment
note here on
taking
the
place.
disclosure feature.
Yeah.
Well, there will be a disclosure, unless such teacher receives the affirmative vote of a majority of all members, other than,
Yeah, I know, but
Right,
you know what
so that's
happens
the-
is that, you know how,
So it has to be a
procedurally what happens
5-3
is
vote.
we've got our personnel portion of the budget, which is we're voting for A through Z, and somebody's name is thrown in there, and then typically what's happened in the past is, A through C except C.
C
you know,
1.2.
And then C.1.2A, and then it's like, okay, and then they do a vote, and one person says abstain, and then we go back and do it, and then everybody votes, you know.
Okay, so
and then there's no disclosure of what
Gotcha.
happened.
Gotcha.
And-
So then the paragraph under that address that disclosure issue. There must be, prior to hiring, there must,
be some sort of public disclosure.
yeah, to get given to the board.
That,
Bill, did you see
A
anything in
spouse
your
or
review of
somebody.
other districts that had anything to that effect?
No.
All right, we can get Subers to weigh in on that too.
I would include a line saying that has to be published in the minutes of the meeting at which the new teacher or whatever position is hired.
Well, the minutes.
well, the minutes reflect the
Would
course
reflect
of the
that
minute of the meeting, right? So
Yes.
if you have
Agenda.
to have some sort of
He means
disclosure,
agenda.
you mean the agenda,
Yeah.
Connor?
Well, that would work too, but I mean, the minutes represent the official record of the meeting, and if an employee is making a disclosure at the meeting, which they should, we should work to make sure that that disclosure makes its way into the minutes.
Right. But what Andrew is saying is, you know, when we go to vote for these, they're typically lumped in with 10, 15, 20, other
Personnel record.
Yeah.
personnel changes. There's nothing that stands out to us that, hey, this one in particular one is a situation where the board member is related to the candidate.
And nothing stick out for the public to know that either. And then,
Like it's two different names even.
I mean, like,
Right.
the board member clearly has to abstain, and I've seen that happen, but there's been no mention during the meeting of what that abstention was for, why it happened.
Right.
As you're a board member, you're sitting there going, well, why that person abstained? You don't know. And as a public, you have no idea either. I
Right,
think
right.
this is critical enough that there should be some sort of mandated disclosure prior to that vote taking place, that the public and the rest of the board is aware of what's happening.
I have a question with this employment of professional employees. Is that, like, we're just talking about teachers, or would that be psychologists?
Psychologists.
All of they're all part of the same thing?
Yeah.
So, we have that now, don't we?
We've had spouses who
Yeah.
are professional employees with board members as their spouses. Yeah.
Because I was just first thinking teacher, but it could be other professional staff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, because that word teacher throws me off. I'm only thinking of the teachers rather than no professional staff.
Yeah, I think that's
Professional-
correct.
The
As opposed to teacher.
nurses, guidance counselors.
Yeah, so I think what Monica's
I
saying is
just-
line 15, I guess it is. It says no teacher shall be employed. It should say no professional employee
Yeah, that's,
14. Right. I agree with that.
as opposed to teacher. Good call.
And it's the same paragraph as in employment of administrators. 303, and employment of the classified staff. So we'll modify those to, in 502. The fourth paragraph down in 502. Also the fourth one in 303. So at least we can add disclosure part to 303. And 502.
Makes sense.
Okay.
We're changing nomenclature in 402 to say not, instead of no teacher, it should say no professional employee. The other thing I had in my notes here was on the second page of 402, is with the staff vacancies which represent opportunities for professional advancement or diversification shall be made known to the district personnel so that they may apply for such positions. Is that prior to posting those things at large?
Yes,
So they get first dibs?
it's posted internally first.
Is that a contract requirement or is that a statutory requirement?
I think it's neither.
I don't know. You don't know.
If it's
I
not
I don't believe the statute says that.
Okay, does our contract require that?
That I'd have to double check.
Because I would say that,
I'm not aware of any statutory requirement that ties the district's hands to have to post a job. That, in other words, I'm not aware of any statutory requirement that really ties the board's hands. You usually get your hands tied by contracts.
no, so I'm saying here in terms of staff vacancy, which represents opportunities for professional advancement or diversification, it says shall be made known to district personnel so that they may apply for such positions. I don't have an issue for that. I'm wondering whether there should be a pecking order as who gets to see that first. Does it get posted internally first and then externally, so you're forced to hire within first? Or can you post it at large and you just have to make sure people are aware of it?
The way if I'm wordsmithing this, it says so that they may apply. So in other words, they get a chance to apply.
So you can post it at large.
Correct.
And are we doing that? Or are we posting them internally first and then at large? Because that gets into this issue then of, can somebody make an argument of past practice, and then that becomes an issue that we can't now, we gotta do it that way, and even though our policy doesn't specify.
I always thought that was posted internally first. I could be wrong.
It's going to take some research.
Can you check on that?
Yeah, we're gonna have to
See what
research
the contract requires, and if it does, and.
On this one area, it says employees are required to meet all provisions necessary to maintain.
Which part are you in?
I'm on 402.
Yeah. First page, second page?
Let me look. Just scroll down.
Second page,
Let me see.
all provisions necessary to maintain active certification.
Yes.
That's at the second sentence on page 2 on the back.
Does that mean that they're required to pay for everything to keep their certification active?
I'm sorry, I lost where you were.
Line 4, 5 on page 2 of 402.
Because does the district pay to keep them active? Because it says employees are required. So does that mean that they have to pay for it? Or does that just mean
that's in the contract, what credits you pay for. Remember, that's the whole.
Provided somebody applies for reimbursement from the school district, right? So I guess theoretically, a teacher would go out and pay for it on their own, and then they could always come back to us for tuition reimbursement.
You have no obligation. The way this obligation works is the employee has an affirmative obligation to maintain certification. That's not the district's responsibility. That falls upon the employee.
Mm-hmm.
Where it becomes a cost to the district is when you, through your contract, decide to help fund them doing that, which is typical in contracts because teachers in their first stages of development have to go from temporary certification to permanent certification, and that costs money
Right.
because they have to go take
Well, I was just
college
wondering,
classes.
I mean, if we go by this, does this mean, if they didn't have a contract, could we go by this and that they are to provide their own certifications to stay active? I mean, I'm just,
No, all that is saying is if you need, and you need 24 credits to go from your instructional 1 to your instructional 2. You don't have to pay for any of those credits if you contract otherwise, but it doesn't remove the obligation of them to do it. They still have to go do it, whether you pay for it or not.
Yeah, I don't read this as saying that they're required to pay for it.
Correct.
okay.
I mean, I read it as they're required to have it, and I think what's happening is, by default, they have to pay for it. The question is whether or not contractually, which is a separate
Whether
issue,
it's-
we're
okay.
reimbursing them or not.
All right.
Correct. But the statute is very clear. If you want to maintain permanence, because we cannot let a teacher whose certification has lapsed teach.
Right.
It's illegal. Because we get audited. We get audited every so often by the state in a records audit. And if, for example, if I didn't have a proper commission or the proper paperwork to be a superintendent, the district could get fined and I could get dismissed.
Okay.
Same thing with any teacher. If they haven't completed within 3 years or 6 years all of the requirements to become permanently certified, which is you get your instructional 2, it's called at the state level, we have to fire you. Can't teach. You could, out of the goodness of your heart, suspend them until they, at such time, met the requirement, but you would have no obligation to them to let them continue to teach, because the district could get fined for a certification violation. I mean, that's way more than's in here, but I just wanted to give you background to understand why that statement might be there.
I have some follow-up. I was looking at the contract about the issue Mr. Basil raised. I'll read to you. It's very interesting. Under vacancies and transfers, item A, in the event the superintendent has received 60 days written notice that a position has become open by a notification of retirement, resignation, or request for leave, then a written notice of the vacancy shall be given to employees 7 days before any vacancy is advertised outside the school district.
So that's a contractual.
That's a contractual issue.
But only if retirement, resignation, or request for leave, and only if they give you 60 days notice.
That's correct. If that's what the contract says, that's what we have to follow.
Is there a need to keep it in policy, however?
It's not in the policy. I was just asking the question for clarification, which was, the policy is vague there. It says vacancies shall be made known to district personnel. It doesn't say when. So I was just asking the question.
Yeah, we're going to go back and I'm going to check the practice and if there's any statutory language that relates to why that statement
I
would
can't
have
imagine it
been
would be statutory language, but
there. It doesn't sound statutory to me.
those are the questions I had on the twos.
I'll just bring up the Administrative Guideline 303, employment of administrators. The third paragraph on that administrative guideline, it says, and we haven't been doing this, that's why I'm wondering if it should be taken out. A team composed of board members, district administrators, and building level personnel will conduct interviews with an administrator chairing the team. The interview team will rank order the applicants based on the preliminary interviews and, blah, blah, blah. Do you want that in there, or should it be?
I think we've done that on a loose basis. I mean, we did that with our technology guy. Frank kind of sat in on some of the interviews. I thought, I guess we didn't quite do it with our assistant business manager. We did that. We kind of saved that for the end. I don't think it's a bad idea that when you're hiring an administrator.
I mean, I 20 years ago, that's what there was. The team I met with in the evening.
Had board members.
Had all those people on it. There were 3 board members, and I was just being interviewed for an assistant principal position. the principal, the assistant principal, and Anne Marie Trainer was the assistant principal. It was a large committee.
Yeah, no, I think,
I like that idea.
I think board members should be involved in those decisions.
Okay, so we'll leave it in.
Yeah.
I've never been anywhere where board members weren't involved in the hiring of administrators.
Yeah, I think here, though, it's sort of,
It's been loose.
we step in at the end,
Right.
and maybe we need to be involved a little bit earlier.
Bill, where is that again?
Sometimes that was done purposely, though.
Yeah.
You know, where Dr. Otto would vet out the candidates.
Right.
Right.
It's in the administrative guidelines.
Oh, in the guideline, I'm looking at
Third
the
paragraph.
A lot of that comes down to the flavor of different boards, too, what they really want to do versus what.
I
shouldn't.
think it's good to keep it in there.
I would agree.
Because the past several years and maybe the next several years, you know, we're so focused on all of these financial hardships and budgeting and stuff. But once that settles down,
This will
the
become-
board could get back to
Right.
doing the things that, you know,
Boards
make more
typically do.
sense. Right. So just one comment, not to beat a dead horse here, but if we could just somehow make a note somewhere so that we can address the other side of the coin in regards to, you know, board member coming on board who has some relative of some sort that is already employed by the district. How is that addressed?
Yeah, we'll
This handles the other side.
yeah, but I think what I'm taking it away is we need to take a look at this word here that says employed versus hired.
Well, no, that's for this policy.
That's fine, yeah.
But you can still end up with the situation, though, because you're not addressing it on the side of the board member coming in second.
Oh, okay.
What happens when that professional person is already here, and then the board member comes in?
Gets elected to the board.
Right, what happens?
And that's got to be in some other policy somewhere.
But the board hasn't approved that situation, the taxpayer, I guess, did.
So the essential question is what happens when a board member is elected after
Right.
the hiring
Right.
of an employee, post of a current employee? I got it.
And that may be contractual. That may be because of this policy, you may able to say contractually, we have the right to terminate your employment. Not that you would, but
The board reserves that.
you need to balance it. There needs to be a balance of this policy when that situation occurs. And maybe the way you balance it is to say, in the contracts, we reserve the right for termination for the sole purpose that we don't like the idea that
Conflict of interest.
there's a, yeah.
Yeah, we could check that out.
But they usually just abstain from voting on anything related.
Yeah, that's all fine and good, but
It's
that
all fine
still
and good,
doesn't
but
fix
there's
the
been-
wording here.
There's been some, if you go back and you look at our agendas and you look at votes on things, certain items have come up in the agenda in a certain order,
Okay.
so that a board member could technically vote on that item, and then later in the agenda, their spouse has been hired. You follow me?
The item is related to the spouse that they voted on earlier, but they weren't part of the hiring vote.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's.
And I don't even need to pull out specifics. All I'm
So-
trying
I don't
to
think you have
say
to say any
is you've
names.
got an item in this policy that I can clearly identify a loophole to. So we need to close that loop.
Okay.
That's all.
No, I think that makes sense, because it isn't addressed. It doesn't look like it's addressed anywhere. We'd have to go back and look.
All right, we done with those?
Okay.
Policy 304, 406, and 504 deals with employment contracts for each of the category of employees. And again, I didn't see any changes in other districts. You may want to make minor changes.
I don't have any comments on this.
We actually keep a copy of those signed contracts in the file.
I got something highlighted here in 406. It's in the third paragraph. Contract, about line 21, so it says, contract language shall specify those matters contained in statute for professional and temporary professional employees. Said contract shall renew itself each year unless terminated by one of the parties in accordance with conditions contained in the statute. So it's an automatic renewal. I guess that makes sense.
That's correct. That would be the purpose of a letter of resignation.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like in private schools, it's not the way it's set up. So every year, they have to,
Be renewed.
their employment has to be extended to them again.
Correct.
So is that statutory, or is that?
I imagine if I looked up school code 1121 there, it would probably have that wording. I can double check that for you just to make sure. But I do know it's automatically renewable.
If you don't mind checking.
No, I'll
just-
double check it. I'm making a note now. I have a good knowledge of personnel and these issues, but I don't have it memorized, that's for sure.
Need more time to review, or is everyone ready?
No, I think-
Boilerplate, all the
Okay.
other districts are very, are the same.
A lot of personnel stuff is, again, school code controlled. It's either school code or contract.
You may want to look at 50. I have to admit, I'm not really in tune with our classified employee contract. We just talked about each newly classified employee shall serve a probationary period of 90 days, during which time he or she shall be.
That is
subject to
actually,
discharge.
I'm aware of that. That is in our contract.
That's in our contract.
That is
90
also in the
days.
contract, too. Now,
Didn't we just change that to 6 months or something like that, or
I'd have to double check that. That I don't know.
maybe I'm just confusing that with something else?
Yeah, you might be. I'll double check that. But I do know, because we actually, without getting specific, we invoked that to
Mhm.
dismiss a few employees in my time here.
Okay.
You fine with those?
Yep.
Okay, assignment and transfer, 5407 and 505.
Do we need a change in these requirements on 406, 407, Dr. Otto?
Where are you referring to, Andrew?
Assignment and transfer.
407?
I mean, anything.
406.
It is 407.
407?
Yeah, the numbers jump around.
I'm not there yet. Hold on.
So 407 assignment and transfer says, and I'm only raising this now because of this latest issue that we're dealing with, these furloughs
Mhm.
and demotions, where, you know, it was brought to my attention there was some concern about equity in terms of demotions and
Mhm.
assignments and all that other kind of nonsense. And so I'm just wondering whether, it looks to me, I don't know whether this is statutory or not, but these, there's a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 items of criteria that have to be considered.
Mhm.
Do we need to change the language of those, or add other considerations, or eliminate certain considerations that give the administration more flexibility in terms of being able to shuffle people from one place to the next? I mean, my understanding what Ms. Torcha had expressed was, you know, we're moving people from regular education to special education because of certain criteria that really weren't the best qualified to be in that place, but because of the way that we were bumping, that's the way they were going, and you guys had to take a second look at that and then change that. And Can those things be challenged? And so I'm just trying to think of if we got to reword our policy to give the administrative team the flexibility to do what needs to be done that's in the best interest of the district, both financially as well as academically.
Right.
Then now is the time to change the criteria.
I don't think any one of those bullets, without looking at the statute, is statutory. I think that was a district decision whatever date this was written.
So I guess the question is,
So you're thinking, do you want to edit some of those bullets, add or delete?
and I think that's where you need to come to us, because we're not the ones.
No. I mean, is that, but is that where you're kind of
That's where I'm
pointing?
going is, I mean, here's an opportunity for you guys to say, well, gee,
So if you
these
want
are
us
some
to-
other criteria that we would like to have so that, we have more arrows in our quiver in terms of being able to move people around or move people out that shouldn't be in certain places because we're using a certain list of criteria. What you don't want happening is an employee using your own standards against you.
Correct.
To say, well, wait a minute, if you're following these standards, then I should have this position, or I should have been bumped from this position to that position, and then we're stuck with somebody in the wrong spot that may not be the best choice. So
No, that makes sense.
Would the contract override this, though?
It could.
it could, but we can use this as a roadmap to renegotiate our contract.
Correct.
So-
I know where he's going with this. That's good sense. So I would say that I can come back to you after we can review this internally, and if we feel that there need to be 6 more bullets, take some out, revise them. We can
Talk
come
to
back.
Brian.
Right. We can come back with a
What kind of case
recommendation.
law might be out there that would hamstring you, or that, hey, this happened in this school district, you guys should be aware of that, so change some of the criteria here so you don't have the same problem.
Yep, I made a note of that.
Nothing leaps out at me, but I'm just,
No, I think what you're saying is, do we want to expand our own internal authority?
yeah. I mean, this one says, for example, the employee's length of service in the district and in the position presently held. Okay, that seems like a logical one, but
Well, I think they're all logical. I think the question is, are they enough?
if that person wasn't in the position that they were supposed to be in to begin with, they're not doing a good job.
Right.
And you want them out of there, but now you got to consider, I don't know, I'm just thinking on the
Well,
box here.
I think, because actually this is something, and Bill would know this, we do go through this every year. We reshuffle our teaching staff. Some go from Monocacy to Birdsboro to middle school to high school, depending on what the needs of the district are.
Now, I don't know whether you're using this policy to guide you or you're using the contract to guide you. And I think there's been a random walk that our contract has taken away from our policies to favor, our professional employees. And I guess what I'm saying is I want to establish our policy now so that when the contract comes up again for negotiation, we can bring that contract back to reflect what our policies currently
Oh,
are.
that's smart. Well, that's because this hasn't been done in such a long time that happens. All right, we'll take that back and
I don't know whether we have the same issue here with 505 or not. but-
And it's a much shorter list in that last paragraph. We might want to pattern it the same way.
I'm just remembering, we had this issue with the aides. Are they classified?
Yes.
Yeah, so the aides were complaining about bumps and tenure and all that.
Yep.
And quite frankly, maybe we shouldn't have tenure as part of our
Well,
consideration.
aides don't have tenure.
Right, well.
I mean, tenure meaning length of service.
Length of service. Maybe that shouldn't be a consideration when it comes to aides, because if you have somebody you don't think is doing the job and you want to get rid of them and move for somebody else, then, length of service maybe should not be a consideration.
I don't think it should be it is for seniority purposes, but not for assignment to a specific job.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have more than somebody else and everything else is equal, then you have to go with the least senior person has to go out first.
I know, but maybe we should be changing that.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Both in terms of our policy and
Right.
in our contract, because if you got a dynamite employee who's been there for 2 years, and you got somebody who's been there for 20 but isn't so great, well, I'd rather have the dynamite employee that's been there for 2 years. Not-
Aren't seniority rights written into our classified contract, though?
I don't know.
I'd have to check that. All right.
I didn't think they were, because We had that whole issue a year ago with the aides. Weren't they complaining about the whole seniority issue?
Yeah,
Some
but
people get bumped.
it was based on seniority, but I think there was some of them were special ed certified. See, some of the aides needed to get certified in special ed. That was the only area that the state required that aides actually have some kind of certification. The regular aides had
Yeah,
no
but
need to have
I
any.
can honestly say, I had concerns with some of the aides that ended up at the high school. They even told me, I don't know this math, I can't do this work up here. But I got stuck with them when aides got moved around. And, they really didn't have the skills to do high school work in a lot of subject areas, and they flat out told me. But they told me they would do their best.
And so we're the criteria that we use for moving people isn't based on their ability to do the job. It's based on some other random.
Yeah.
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 I wasn't happy with that.
Yeah, well, neither should you be. I mean, as a parent, I wouldn't be happy about that either. As a student, as a parent, board member, taxpayer, I mean, everybody should be upset about that.
Yeah.
So,
So we'll go back and come up with some thoughts on that one. Because to be honest with you, there are no statutory references on this policy.
right. Well,
It looks like it's totally board discretion.
Okay.
okay.
Next up,
Abolishing a position, 306 and 408.
The only comment I had was just this small comment on 306. This is just minor. The last paragraph, paragraph before the last paragraph. Superintendent shall inform the board periodically of the number of administrative positions needed. The word periodically, I mean, what does that mean? Does it fall within my 4 years of being a school board member? Is it once a year? I mean, obviously, especially because of the scrutiny that we're under, you look at that all the time. I mean, you're always looking at that.
I mean,
But under, again, just under general policy here,
That's been in there
it should say
probably years.
minimally yearly, minimally annually.
We'll just change it to annually, if that's what you would.
It's a small thing, but just a comment.
Oh, I think it's significant, actually.
I think that's the only comments I had on those. Same thing with, the other one, 408.
And the primary consideration is the effect on education and blah, blah, blah. I don't know whether we need to have in here some sort of fiscal consideration as well, because clearly educational consideration goes out the window when you don't have the money to pay for something anymore. So
What paragraph?
the second paragraph, authority. In the exercise of its authority to reduce staff or abolish positions, the board shall give primary consideration of the effect upon the educational program and shall ascertain the elimination of programs approved by the Department of Education. Well,
So you want to put a financial piece
I
in
just
there?
think that it should, clearly the last 3 years have indicated that.
I
And
made a
then
note.
408, it's the same issue there.
Yeah, finish on both
There should
paragraphs.
be a fiscal component and periodical should be addressed. And I know the law has changed now in terms of abolishing positions, right, for employees. In the last 2 years, hasn't the state changed all that dramatically? With their,
In terms of curtailment of programs, yes.
yeah,
Mhm. It's a one-way.
there'll have to be some sort of statutory change
Correct.
in terms of the language and references.
I was wondering what the program is approved by the Department of Education. Do you still have to submit it to the Department of Education and they have to approve it? Like the curtailment process we went through, we just kind of submitted that we were going to do it. They didn't actually approve it anymore. Is that?
Right, that's what he's
I'm
saying.
alluding to, is that
Oh.
whole
2 years
process
ago,
has changed now.
2 years ago,
Okay,
it
I
was
kind
different.
of reading.
2 years ago, we had to submit it, we had to wait for them to
Right,
get back to us with an
okay.
answer. They took 4 months to tell us whether we could. or
And they
couldn't.
actually had to go thumbs up, or they had the
Right.
right to say yay or nay as well. Now it's a one, once you do it, as Brian said, It's done.
Well, wait a minute. That's a program. This is a position.
But the way you reduce positions is through you have to actually either curtail
But
program.
that's not what this policy says. This policy doesn't say you're limited to abolishing a position through eliminating programs, right? This policy says, you can.
No, I think
abolish-
that's what that line that says, and shall ascertain that elimination of a program is approved by the Department of Ed. Because you can't just, in the state of Pennsylvania, you can't just abolish a person per se. You abolish the program, and then the person attached to it goes.
No, we're talking about an administrator. What program is an administrator
I'm sorry,
attached to?
Which one are you?
They're not.
Right.
Yeah. So I think from an administrative perspective, that's true. From 408, which is the employee.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I was looking at
I'm
408.
thinking administrator. You
Yeah,
guys are
I was thinking, all right, that's why we weren't connecting.
Okay.
But to Frank's point, does PEE have some sort of requirement in terms of reducing or abolishing a position administratively?
No, but what happens is the administrator then has the right to bump back into the professional staff. The seniority rights kick in then, but there's no curtailment required of an administrative position. So the way that comes out in the wash is if we eliminate, and we're actually facing it, if we decide ultimately in our budget to eliminate the APC assistant principal, that position we can done. But the person in that position has the right then to bump somebody else out somewhere else because they maintain their tenure rights. Administrators and teachers have the same tenure rights in
So
Pennsylvania.
they basically go back into the teachers union?
Correct.
Well, I didn't.
You hit the nail on the head.
Huh.
That's how that works. I don't, because I'm a different class of employee. But anyone else who has either any Act 93 employee,
It's a job for life.
well, that's a whole other discussion, but
Yeah.
it is a certain level of protection.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay,
we are,
All right, want to move on?
move on.
certainly.
Okay, suspensions and furloughs, policy 307, 409, 506, and the AGs that go with it.
I thought 307 was vague enough that it gave plenty of flexibility there.
Actually, this is the same, this has to be reflective of the new language. So we'll have to come back to you with what the new language says.
Okay.
It might not have to be since it's so vague, because all it does is it says refer to the state law
And the contract.
and the contract. So we may be okay with these, but if we have to put in some specifics, one of the things that I think, as Bill did his review with these, is that some of the districts haven't caught up to the changes yet either. So they haven't, policies tend to lag behind the statutes. Obviously, because of this is kind of a tedious process that we have to go through to get it done.
All right, you want
The only other thing I was looking for is, again, we're at the classifieds. Under guidelines there, the abolishment of classified positions may be brought about by many facts. I would just change the language there, including but not limited to, and then it lists declining enrollment, utilization of new techniques and technology, and blah, blah, blah. But I don't want to have just those three criteria as the only criteria that are available. And then in the second paragraph, production of delegation of responsibility, it says the superintendent shall provide administrative procedures that provide for the determination of its seniority. Again, we have this issue of seniority here.
Which one are you on?
506.
506.
Yeah. You got this system of recall, and I don't know whether that's, I'm assuming that's not statutory, and maybe that's contractual, but if there's an opportunity here to change the policy to something that's a little bit more rational, I guess is the best way to describe it. and then later we have an opportunity to change the contract to reflect the policy, I don't know whether that's something we ought to be considering. For example, address the concerns that Bill mentioned, where you got people that are moving into positions that they may not be qualified to.
This actually sounds like this was pulled out of contractual language
Right.
at some point when this was written. Yeah, I need that, that's a big paragraph there. There's a lot of verbiage in there.
Well, it just lists a lot of different criteria here.
Well, that's a lot. That's a mouthful, that paragraph. It almost looks like it's specifying a process. We'll have to look at that again. Because I don't know that I've ever done what it says there.
Okay.
Okay. This one here is the one that would change, 308, evaluation of the superintendent.
Yeah.
Parts of this probably do, parts of it don't. This is
I
real.
think.
Well, go ahead, Andrew.
I think as a board, we wanted to change a lot of this. And so, I don't know if we're prepared to make recommendations tonight, but, certainly the law has changed.
Right.
The superintendent evaluation, so I think we need to look at that first.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, see what parts it didn't change the policy, and then we have an opportunity to do that. Because this actually has some contradictory language in here in terms of reviews and meetings and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's
It's been a little odd for me for the 5 years I've been here. I can't laugh or I start coughing. Connor, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Just checking.
Yeah, I don't have any time restrictions tonight.
Oh,
Could be
okay.
here all night for all I care.
Well, I think we'll be wrapped up shortly here.
I'll start
Okay.
coughing in about 10 minutes, so I don't know if I'll be able
wanted
to.
to try to maintain a 9 o'clock dead stop time.
So we can go on to,
Well, Andrew, the way I would like to approach this is, I had said to Bill that this would probably be something that I would work with you as a board on personally, and make some recommendations to you, given that my next contract is a lot shorter than my original. It's 3 years, so you're going to be hiring another super. It doesn't seem like that far away, but my goal is to help get this straightened out to a point where it's a little. As the recipient of this process, it's been a little strange, and I think it needs some work.
Yeah, and I also think that this is one that we should take,
some time.
some considerable time with. It's the
And that's
highest
right.
position in the
Right.
district. It's
Right.
very important.
Right, and that's what I had said to Bill. We weren't prepared to come with any specific changes because we felt like the board would want to be pretty intimately involved with what would happen to this policy.
Right.
Which would be my recommendation as superintendent. I mean, even if I weren't superintendent, I would say this is something a board really needs to take its time with.
And I'd like to read how other people do it too.
Well, I can rustle up some other processes.
Because this one, I've never been comfortable the way we do this process. And this is reflected in your current contract, not the new one, but this process here is reflected in the
In
superintendent
this
contract.
last year.
Right.
Right. As of
And-
July 1, it'll change.
Right, and so this whole thing, we got to start something in April, and then we have due date by this, and then we have a June.
Not all boards
Whatever
do
day,
it. Not
and
all boards do it this
There's
way.
contradictory information about the mid-year evaluation, about when that starts. It's like it starts in November, but by November 30th, you have to have this done, and then you report it to the board in January, and it's like,
It's weird.
yeah.
I'm only telling you, truth in advertising, as the person that's been the recipient of this process, the process has seemed a little odd to me.
Well, I think if
Not bad, just odd in its process. I mean, you have to do it. Obviously, it's part of.
And the tools that we use, I think those need to be delineated
Yeah.
better. I mean, the
Some of that's been made.
online anonymous evaluation tool that we use, I think, is not a good tool.
No, I would concur with that again.
I think we have to fit this in for where it makes sense, but I would really hope that it happens, before December.
Yeah, I would agree.
because I'd like to
Oh, I can-
participate in that.
Well, what my
Done
recommendation
this
was,
summer. I mean, like, I'd
Yeah,
like to
I mean,
have
July,
this-
August, right after we get through all.
let's get
everything
through
we
the
gotta
next
do.
one, and in the meantime, I'll take the sole responsibility for doing the research, feeding you as the board with what I think you need to consider, and then you do your due diligence and consider what you want.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd like to see a couple
and
of-
have some dedicated sessions where we could sit down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And review with you,
Absolutely.
with the full board, sit down.
Well,
and
I want to actually serve as
hash it
kind
out.
of in a consultant role
Right.
too for the future health of the school district to say this is how I think you should be evaluated. Even though I obviously can't personally remove myself from it, I would like the board to have a system that makes sense to you and then to the public as to how you're evaluating at least the most visible position in the school district.
I mean, maybe a path forward is, come the June policy committee meeting, if you could provide us
Yeah, I can do that. It gives me enough time.
other examples and how
That's
the
not hard.
law, the new
That's
law
easy.
impacts
I can do
this.
that in
And then we
24
can look
hours.
at that, and then come July, we meet as a
start
policy
having some
committee, we can
sessions.
start talking about it, and then quite frankly, as a board, when we meet, we can have a couple of executive sessions
Mm-hmm.
after a regular meeting to say, okay, look, we're talking about revamping the evaluation process for the superintendent, so, everybody
See,
review
I
this
mean-
material and give us some feedback.
There's just one thing I would, and now I'm just bird walking a little bit. I think an effective evaluation process would start first with actually a strategic goal setting session that says, this is what we're going to do this is kind of, you know what I mean, a plan. I've seen it done that way in other districts.
Okay.
Where you actually sit down and you have a kind of like a superintendent, I don't want to call it a retreat, but for lack of a better word, it's a planning session for the year. Here's where we're going. This is how we want to evaluate you, superintendent, Mr. or Mrs. Superintendent. Here are the goals for the year. Do you agree? Come back, and then you go from there. Instead of just handing a piece of paper and not having any discussion, I think what I found has been missing in this has been the discussion part of it with the whole board, and I think it's gotten better. I mean, I'm not trying to glad hand anybody, but over the last couple of years, it's actually started to improve, but I think it can even get better. And I think that's just for the general health of the school
Right.
district.
That all sounds good.
So I just wanted that on the agenda here tonight, to note that if we're all on the same page, that's how I'll proceed.
I think it's a good idea.
I've actually been wanting to do it a year or two since, so this is a golden opportunity now that I'm being renewed with a new contract and everything, so perfect timing.
Okay, moving on to evaluation of employees. We have 309 administrative, 410 temporary, which is your teachers without tenure, professional and temporary. Your 411.
I guess the question I have is 309, I should take them one at a time. 309, is there a particular time of the year that we should be doing that? I mean, the superintendent, I guess, is the one who's doing the evaluation of the administrators, correct? And the way we've done it in the past is the superintendent does a review of the administrators, and then it comes to the board, and then the board sees what the
summary
results,
evaluation,
the summary
right.
evaluation of those people. And there's always been some contention between the board's opinion of how people were evaluated versus the way the superintendent had evaluated them. Going back to Robbins when I was here, clearly there was some discussion about that. And I don't know, this just says the superintendent's going to do the review and then notify the board of what it was. And I don't know whether we should put in there, the review takes place every May,
Right.
and the board gets notified at the May meeting, and there's discussion and feedback received, and then administrators get their final evaluation numbers in June or something like that before we close the fiscal year, so that there is some board participation in here, because traditionally that's the way we've sort of done it.
That has been the practice.
Yeah, that was my comment too. It's just the same words apply that stood out to me in the other policies. Regular and periodic. What's that mean? Periodically do things. What does that mean? I mean, this is a policy. It's got to be.
I would also
defined, right?
say,
And
under 309 that I wouldn't single out including assistant superintendents. I'm not even sure why that's there. That just means all administrative employees. I'm not even really sure. I can't read somebody's mind as to why they would actually say including assistant superintendents. Why doesn't it say including assistant business manager? I don't understand why it's there. It seems like a loose end. I think that sentence should end, there shall be a plan for regular evaluation, and then you define that, Frank. I don't think those words are bad, but you need to then define that. Beyond that, that's just an opening statement.
I mean, that would be, that would be fine. If there's some schedule, see schedule below or whatever, that's fine.
Well, I think we can actually blow this policy up. In other words, expand it to do if the boards.
Well, did this say including assistant superintendent? Was that thrown in there because there's no policy identifying the evaluation of the assistant superintendent anywhere else? So it was thrown into this policy?
I don't know, given that this was written in 1987. So I honestly can't tell you.
Probably
that.
My guess is that there was no policy addressing it, and they just threw it in here.
Dr. Otto, has our assistant to the superintendent always been an assistant to the superintendent, or have there used to be a commissioned assistant superintendent?
I think Daniel Boone has always just hired one commissioned officer.
Okay, I was wondering that might have something to do with it. But
Well, this isn't the assistant to the superintendent. This is the assistant superintendent.
No, but what there is actually, there's a school code position, assistant superintendent, where you could actually give a contract like mine.
That's what I thought I was reading.
Right.
Not the assistant to the superintendent.
Correct.
This says assistant superintendent.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, that would need to be changed, right?
But we don't even hire one.
We don't even hire, right?
We don't hire somebody called assistant superintendent.
So the takeaway here is you guys are going to change, like, what does periodic evaluation mean? In terms of annually, we're going to put in a date.
Well, actually, what I'd like to do is come back to you with a process.
And then including the board in the process too, because, administrators, if the superintendent's going to make a recommendation to the board is going to push back on that or accept it or whatever, and then it's got to go back to the administrators so they understand, what the review ultimately was. What's your take on that, Bill, as an administrator?
Yeah, I think that would be good. I think that there's more input, the better. It would be good to, like, the administrator sets their goals. Maybe the goals need to also, they're reflected on what superintendent's goals are for the district, and they're built off of that, so that it is like a team effort. You don't have direct contact with administrators, or even you may hear things about things going on in a building, but they're not very accurate a lot of times, and I would hate for, on the negative side, for that to be what a board member brings to the table, what their child heard, that would be my only negative there.
Well, clearly, you have to be measured against certain benchmarks. So I think for us as a board, we're always leaning on the superintendent to say, well, look, these are the deliverables we expect from you. And to the degree that you can, as you stated, you can incorporate those deliverables into the administrative goals so that the rest of the administrators there's an alignment of interest, right? And then we all have the same benchmarks with which we're measuring people by, right? So if we say we want to see, test scores go up, well, okay, that means that high school principals' evaluation is going to be based partly on test scores increasing. So will the superintendents.
Right.
And,
Yeah, that's you're kind of getting into a topic that has always kind of bothered me with all these evaluations. Is to me it's like a one-ended bookend, without the other end. We always talk about evaluations, but we never talk about, well, what are you evaluating? You've got to start out with a goal. You got to start out and say, here's what I expect to get done, and then I'm going to evaluate you on that. And we always just talk about the evaluation end of it, but we never really talk about the goal end. I mean, looking at these, I'm almost tempted to say, let's just rename them to goals and evaluations of administrative employees, goals and evaluations of the superintendent. We
What
need
I would
both
say, the
ends
way-
of this bookend.
I think, no, I agree with you. I think I would just come at it from a little bit of a different perspective. You would embed in this process that item number 3, annually, administrators will be required to submit goals for approval, blah, 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 et cetera, that you actually embed that goals process in the evaluation so that you have it.
I think you also refer to this in administrative, you're going to refer to the superintendent goals. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
And then if there's, we'll go to the next section, 410, I guess, and 411. But the teachers' goals then, and the criteria they're being judged about whether they're satisfactory or not, also need to be embedded now in the administrators, the building principals' goals, right? And so there's a complete alignment of interest from the board's goals all the way down to the person in the classroom to what we want to see happen in our school district. And I think what's going on now, there's a bottoms-up sort of approach. Teachers do whatever they're doing. Administrators say, well, I sat in the classes and they seemed okay to me. And then, it comes up to the, we're sitting here at the top and we're pounding on the superintendent. Hey, we want to see this. We want to see this. And there's no alignment of any of the goals that are happening here. So,
Well, not of all of them, that's for sure.
Yeah, so they start out with yours.
because we
And then you take yours and you cut them down into theirs, and they take theirs and cut them down into the teachers.
Staying on budget, finding cost saving. I don't know what it is, but we've given some fiscal requirements in terms of our performance evaluations, but I don't think those translate down to the administrators. It said the administrator, well, look, you're given X number of dollars, budget for that. If you can't budget that, you're going to be impacted, negatively on your performance review if you can't handle a budget, or I don't know what. So, and that may not just be a building administrator. It could be a sports director. It could be the special ed person. Whatever the heck it is. We've given different goals that need to be addressed. So, So I think you guys got to take all these policies in combination and make sure that they reflect each other.
Well, the other thing
Another-
that I wanted to point out was in the 400 series, the state is actually rolling out a new evaluation system we actually have a state mandated teacher evaluation tool now, where before it could be district discretion, but now they've come up with, and the principals were just receiving training on that document, the preliminary training already this morning, so that has to be reflected in here as well. This was written back in a time when...
And this stuff for like the guidelines for professional employees looks like it comes right out of their contract. And I don't know whether there is something in their contract that talks about how they're being evaluated, but this talks about identifying and improving and reinforcing the skills, attitudes, and abilities which enable an employee to be effective. Well, shouldn't we also be identifying what their weaknesses are and what is unsatisfactory performance? It never talks about the negatives. It's just talking about all the positives there.
Which policy are you on?
410 guidelines.
Okay, go ahead.
Identify and suggest ways to improve. Okay, that makes sense. To provide information concerning the overall performance of the individual. And the evaluation plan shall be uniform. That makes sense. Involve employees in evaluation, modification of the plan itself. The plan shall provide procedures for assessing duties and responsibilities of an professional employee other than primary functions. Identifying and commending effective performance, counseling and assisting professional employees on a professional basis, and evaluating all professional employees annually. I don't know. It seems to me that we need to also identify what the weaknesses are or unsatisfactory performance and how you raise the bar. And I don't know how you address that in the language here, but I think this is kind of soft, I guess is where I'm coming from, 410. Identify and improve attitudes and abilities which enable employees to be effective at achieving district goals. Well, maybe this is where we say, look, you need to achieve district goals, period, or, you're going to get an unsatisfactory rating. I don't know why we hold professional employees to a different standard than we are going to hold our administrative employees. They should all be held to the same standard. and then we're going to outline, annually what those benchmarks are that they're going to be measured against. So I don't know what degree statutorily we can do that, but I don't see any statutory things being cited here under guidelines. But maybe you can say, look, it's test scores, it's percent improvement over a 12-month cycle of students. You guys would have to give us
Actually, the new form is starting to address some of that.
Are we required to use that form,
Yes.
or can we use our own?
We can supplement, but we have to minimally use the one that the state provides.
Okay, so you start off with what the state provides, but then I think we have to add some other benchmarks to that, for performance by a teacher. And I think right now, you read the stuff from PISA or from HASBA and other places. Teachers in the state of Pennsylvania get 99% of the population of teachers get a satisfactory rating on their employment. That's just statistically impossible. Either the bar is so low that anybody can get a satisfactory performance, and everybody is, or the criteria is a joke.
Now, would you do this for every staff person? Have them set up every professional employee set up their own goal?
I don't think they should be setting their own goals. I think we should be the board should be setting the goals at a global level. The superintendent now takes those goals and pushes them down to an administrative level, and the administrators then take those same goals and push them down to an employee level, right?
How do you monitor all that?
Yeah,
Like
Each
set up-
level, each level monitors has to.
That's
Each
the
level has
building.
to do it.
Level monitors its own level?
I sit with the administrators and ask them to give me progress reports on their goals.
And there's got to be benchmarks, right? You have to have some sort of measurable. You can't just say to a teacher, yeah, you did a great job this year. Well, how do you measure?
Well,
good?
what I'm thinking of is there a way, because I know at BTI, all teachers had to go in, and every 3 months we had to put in how we're accomplishing the goals of BTI. BTI would say, we want this, this, and this. How are you going to achieve this, this, and this while you're teaching your course? And then you go into the computer and you actually look at their goals, and then you put in how you're going to accomplish what they're asking you to do. And so you'd put it into a computer, so you don't have to sit there and say, blah, blah, here you go, here's my goal. It's all already computerized so that you can just pull it up and say, okay, what is Monica doing to accomplish BTI's goal? And then it's right there. They can pull up every teacher
Right.
and look at what they're doing. That's all I was thinking of. How
Yeah,
are you
do you
going
have-
to keep track of that?
Do you have deliverables that someone can measure your success or failure at achieving those goals?
Oh, you mean how do they
quantify whether you've done what you said you were going to do?
usually they looked at how many students dropped out, how many how the grade scores were, how did I accomplish what they wanted? And I don't know, I didn't do the analytical aspect of it. I just put in what I did
Yeah.
to accomplish what they were asking me to do, and then it went off to Never Land. I don't know. But you would get a feedback from, like, the director would then say, Monica, I read your goals, and I read what you were trying to do, and then I would get feedback from them. But if they didn't think I was doing enough, then of course I got negative feedback. But if I was doing what they thought I should be doing, then I got positive feedback.
How do you evaluate teachers?
I started with, quantifiable things like their lesson plans, and then what the lesson plan had to have in it, and then that they were following the lesson plan. Years ago, I was the principal for 15 years, people didn't turn their lesson plans in, and they didn't always have them. Well, you know me, you know what I'm going to do. No, I want your lesson plan, I want to check it off, and when I come in here, I expect you to be within it. I can understand you may be a day off because there was an assembly or something, or bad weather, but you need to be where you said you were going to be. That's the first thing. And there's a goal, but there's goals with every lesson. So if they're doing Algebra 1 and they're learning factoring, I don't even remember the terminology anymore, but they're learning factoring, and that's the goal, and they put in the strategies that they're going to use, then that's what I expect to see. And if they're, then in the end, when they have hopefully a standardized Algebra 1 test, which we developed my last few years as the principal, because everybody, we all know this as parents when our kids, if they went through high school, depending on what teacher they got, how much they learned. Some of the teachers, they're A or B, or we get a kid from Philly that has an A or B in Algebra 1, and they come here and they can't come close to doing Algebra 2 because they don't know Algebra 1. The whole movement is towards standardization, so that your teachers within your building are all teaching to the same objectives, and they're testing the same objectives. So they all, I made them get together, all the Algebra 1 teachers, and develop test questions. And they all started using the same test questions in social studies and English, not so much, but in science and math and social studies they did.
Now, when you did that, were you able then to see, well, students in this grade are getting A's in this classroom, but the students in this classroom are mostly getting C's. Now I'm going to evaluate that teacher based on student performance on that standardized test?
Yes, but you have to look at the makeup of the student body, because their argument back would be, well, I have a lot more low-level kids in my section. I teach Algebra 1 or Applied Algebra 1, period 4, right before the VOTech kids go. So I get all the VOTech kids, and they're not as academically oriented as the college prep kids. And there are VOTech kids that are taking Algebra 1 and they're not as academically oriented. And that's accurate. Their skill, first of all, their IQ quotient isn't as high, so the teacher had a legitimate argument. So you also have to take that factor.
I hear that, but you know what? As a private enterprise, I sit back and say to myself, we don't all enjoy the hand we get dealt in business, right, in life. And sometimes you got to rise to the occasion. I don't go around and blame a builder next door that my circumstances are different than his, and therefore he's more successful and makes excuses for it. You know what I mean? I have to deal with the cards that I'm dealt and make a success out of it. So if I'm a teacher and I get some kids that are not as academically sharp as somebody else, that's the hand I've been dealt.
Well,
right?
that's why the measure is now, how have you progressed that kid? Right. So you could end up with teaching all gifted kids, but have you really moved them forward as far as their ability? So that's what the new stuff out of the state is starting to measure.
Right, and that's what BTI made us do, is you had to take whatever group you were given, whether high, low, whatever, and you had to tell the administration how you were going to creatively teach that group of kids. And if you had one high, one low, how are you going to adapt your teaching skill to accommodate every student in your class? And that was part of what I had to come up with, is how do I work with each individual child to get them to where they need to be on the test score? And maybe that's what you were asking me before, but I had to figure out how to do that. And that was my goal, how to teach all types of kids.
Right, so I think it's like a percentage of movement, right? So if you're testing here in the beginning of the year, and now you're testing here at the end of the year, and you've moved this far, and it's relative, right? Everybody should have moved, whether you're gifted or at the bottom of the class rung, everybody should have moved
Somewhere.
somewhere.
Well, they all do.
Well, clearly they do. The question is,
How much?
how much?
Right.
And is it enough? And if you're not the right person for that job,
Well, we need.
If you have teachers teaching the same lesson plans, right, if you've adapted that, did you ever go throughout half the year and then just switch the teachers? Since they're all teaching on the same lesson plan anyway?
No.
So you start out with the smarter kids, and I start out with the more challenged kids, and then we flip it and see what happens. Did you ever do that?
No.
Just curious.
Yeah, I've never actually. I mean, that's kind of an interesting concept that I've never seen it done.
I'm
Well,
just asking, if it's the same,
Why that Bum Phillips quote, he can, regarding the football coach for the Miami Dolphins, he can take his and then beat yours and take yours and beat his. Because he's a better coach. There are teachers, we have excellent teachers here. 99% satisfactory, that I don't see how that can be true for teachers in Philadelphia and in the cities. It's just not true. Because they aren't doing the job. But I can honestly say, being the principal for 15 years at the high school and popping in on teachers and watching them, invariably they were always doing their job and they were working towards their goals. And there's.
Now, Mr. Maxwell, did you pop in on the teachers, or are they given warning of an evaluation?
Both. Popping in, standing outside their door and just listening to what's going on. They knew I was doing that too, but they didn't always see me. You don't want to do a whole evaluation, go up, like plan your day and show up and, I'm giving a test today. And then, things you plan to get accomplished, you can't get accomplished. So I would ask them, give me a week where you're not testing. I'm going to come in that week, that week. I don't want to pop in when you're doing testing or the students are in the library doing research, because I'm planning my day too. So it's a combination of them, Connor.
Do you ever, I guess, no, it's probably, we're going
But
somewhere else.
I think what the state is doing is really going to be helpful in establishing standards for administrators to use, and which we really didn't have before.
I don't mean to get off topic, but I just got a question. I'm curious. I know we don't do this here, but I'm curious about your legal thoughts behind it.
Go ahead.
When I was a kid, I went to public school, but I was raised Catholic, so I went to the CCD classes, and
Did the same in my kids.
I can remember going into the Catholic school, and the principal of that school, or Mother Superior, whatever it was, had the ability to intercom into the classroom and talk to the teacher. And she also, with that, she had the ability just to turn on the intercom and listen to what was going on in the classroom.
I never did that. I don't know if that's even possible with the intercom system we have.
No, yeah, I'm not. My question is more: did you ever hear that that's some kind of illegal thing to do in the public school system? Because I'm going back 35 years.
I think,
and they had the technology.
You're talking more like eavesdropping.
Whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it's eavesdropping. It's
a public classroom, right?
Yeah, I don't.
Well, that's like me standing outside.
No, I don't know of any legal answer to your question.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you can do it technology-wise. You can have a camera, you turn it on.
Well, I could see the camera might present an issue. I don't know what it could, but I could see that. But just the thought crossed my mind because I remembered years ago that they would do that, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool.
Teachers do get very skittish about how they are evaluated. So I think this does need some serious consideration about how we want to move forward with this, because one thing statutorily, there's a new format that they're doing away with solely the 2020 category in their final form, and now they're going to distinguished, proficient, needs improvement, and I think they're using the word failing now in the new form.
Thank God for using it.
So that's all underway now, and I think that needs to be, to come back to this, needs to be reflected in here because it's not.
It's interesting. Like when I was in grad school, you're in an academic environment as a student. You were evaluated vis-a-vis your peers. So they had these things called LTs, at least the last 10%. So if you got 2 LTs, you were kicked out of the program. So you could be sitting in a classroom and getting an A-, but if everybody else in your class is getting an A, and you're in the bottom 10%, you get an LT for that class. And if you got 2 LTs in the program, you were asked to leave. I'm just saying. Now, I also worked as a broker on Wall Street for a while, And we had the same sort of philosophy going on where you had a trading board, and if your name dropped to the bottom of the trading board and you were still producing, you're still making lots of trades and making lots of money, but you get to the bottom of the board and you're hanging around the bottom of the board long enough, you get called into the manager's office and you're asked to leave.
There's always going to be the best of the best and the worst of the best. There's got to
Yeah,
be.
I'm just saying though.
It's a consequence. of
Can
that.
you
Right.
you
It's
incorporate
consequence,
a thing where, hey, look, you got a lot of great teachers, but are you great relative to your peers? That's one way of raising the standard. One way of raising the bar. I'm just asking. I'm not saying that's what we do. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, because your philosophy is there's always going to be a loser. There's always going to
You're
be a
always going to have the
loser.
bottom 10%, right?
They could all be rocket
if everybody's
scientists, but
mediocre-
who's the worst rocket
If
scientist?
everybody's mediocre, how do you move the bar up? You say, well, look, if you're at the worst of the worst, then you're out of here, or you're going to get it, not necessarily get out of here, but you're going to get an unsatisfactory, and that's a warning to you to say, well, look, you got to step up your game and be prepared to do better. It's like, do you have to be, if a lion's chasing the two of us, do I have to be, or three of us, do I have to be the fastest, or I just have to be fastest and the slowest person, right? And because that's the person who's going to get eaten. And I'm just wondering, it doesn't have to be the evaluation tool, but it can be a component of the overall evaluation. Did you move your students from A to B? Yeah, okay, you did that, but did somebody else do something better than that? Did everybody else move theirs instead of from A to B, they moved them from A to Z? You only moved them from A to B. That was a requirement. Great, you met the requirement, but that didn't quite. Otherwise, you're always moving to the mean. You know what I'm saying? You're always operating at I did what was required of me, so give me my satisfactory. But maybe just doing what's required of you isn't enough. You have to do what's required of you, and then, how does that stand up to your peers? If your peers are always, exceeding expectations, then by God, you need to exceed expectations too. I'm just asking. I mean, can you see that flying with what's being proposed in Harrisburg and what we're doing here?
I think it's going that direction. I think it's been an elusive concept in education, not to get off on philosophy, but there's been a pretty long entrenchment in the terms of what you have seen with everybody getting the satisfactory. I think that's slowly starting to change at the state level to give administrators and school boards who want to start to do that some teeth in the observation tool to allow that to happen.
Do we have a policy, or is it contract that if they get two unsatisfactories, then something can happen to them?
That's if you were wanting to just under the Pennsylvania tenure law, which is again part of the things that tie your hands a little bit. There are specific ways in which a teacher can be dismissed from a statutory level,
Okay.
and their unsatisfactory teaching performance is one of those. And then there's a process by which that happens. Anecdotal records talking about some of the things that he was talking about get written up, serve them notice, then they have a right to a hearing. All that due process stuff comes into place, but there are other things that are more quick, like the unfortunate incident that we had with those are boom, you're fired.
I guess what I'm wondering is,
But there has to be unsats.
here
There has
at
to be
the end of the
unsats.
day,
Two consecutive unsat.
Correct.
right, so here at the end of the day, though, 410 is what we're using to judge people by, right? I mean, this is it. And then there'll be some administrative guideline that actually has some sort of benchmark or tools, whether it's, as you indicated, it's a standardized test, and is everybody scoring well, or is there movement incorporated with that too, and all these other things. And that, I guess that sort of falls under administrative guidelines. But here's our opportunity as a board to say, this is how we're going to measure performance in our teachers going forward, in terms of goals and benchmarks and things of that nature. And so this is our opportunity to raise the bar. And if we don't do it here, then you're relying on the state to provide you with something where 99.8% of the teacher population in the state of Pennsylvania meets a satisfactory score.
Well, to just not to confuse it again, but there are statutory requirements that we have to meet
Sure.
to evaluate teachers, and I think
But can we add to those?
I think that's the essential question. I know the statutory requirement is in the process of changing, and I think that minimally needs to be reflected.
Mm-hmm.
And then where we want to go would be based on our administrative recommendation on how we want to evaluate teachers beyond what the statutory requirement is.
I mean, because at the end of the day, I got on this board not to deal with budgets. but I got on this board because I wanted to see, our
Good teaching.
kids do exceptionally well. I wanted our kids to have the same opportunities I did when I went to college. That the post-secondary matriculation rate was high. Our SAT scores were increasing every year. Whatever the objective standards were that we were using to measure performance were increasing from one year to the next. I'm not sure we've ever sat down and delineated what those were and how we improved those things, other than to say, okay, from year to year, this is how we're doing. We just kind of look at the scores and say, well, that's what it is. But if we're going to, I don't know, provide some goals here, and then now you got some deliverables that we can measure teacher performance against, and you say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to move the bar. I'm not an administrator. I'm not a teacher. I'm just.
Dr. Odo,
as a parent, I would want to see that in my school.
I have a
right?
question about the final exams that are given at the high school. Are those standard across the curriculum? For example, if I were taking a Spanish 1 class with teacher X, and my friends were taking Spanish 1 with teacher Y, would we take the same final exam?
That's what we were working on. That they were
Okay.
not, but we were working on that in every subject area.
There was
And has that been completed?
I don't know what's going on up there now.
Okay, I think that could be a helpful tool to compare teachers against teachers, because if you take the same test and you have one class where all the students score consistently higher than the other class, there's a difference between that.
Right. Well, that was actually something that in my previous employment that the school district where I was at, every department was required to develop. They called them common unit-based assessments. We used to call them CUBAs. And when Mr. McElmoyle mentioned that was part of the philosophy that I brought here. And it takes time to get those things unfurled, but the high school was starting to make that move toward that.
I think
Well, you've got the same
Yeah.
issue that Mr. McElmore brought up earlier, where you've got a different subset of kids, of students, that may not be as...
That's why
Yeah.
we're looking now at value added.
Right.
So where, you're not going to, if you have the lowest performing students that don't have the ability, you need to move them. What's the value added? You could have gifted kids and you really have to move them. That's what they're getting at from the state now.
Right. That's where the test scores don't really...
Well, actually, the state has a measurement called PVAS, it's Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System. So we have those scores for.
But they weren't available at the high school level.
No, because they don't have the PSSAs. They were based on the
But even when
PSSAs.
we had them, we had the PSSAs. PVAS wasn't available for high school administrators. So only middle school was as high as it went.
Oh,
So you couldn't see what the value added was. You had to, look at other criteria to see how a teacher was performing. So you looked at things like lesson plans. Were they prepared? Not only were they prepared, but were they ready to talk about the subject? Were they knowledgeable about their subject matter that day? Because sometimes you could walk in and they really weren't. They weren't really. They didn't study up on that particular subject the night before. You take, like, Mrs. Romaine is fantastic with AP Calculus. You go in her room, you can tell and she's in her room till 5 o'clock every night studying AP Calculus, so she's ready to talk about that particular topic that they're going to address. The kids are doing it for homework, but she's got to, brush up on it. She knows it, but you got to be brushed up on it, whatever the subject is. And sometimes some teachers weren't. That you could tell it was mediocre.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't top of the line. So you look at that when you're evaluating them. Then we started to standardize the tests across the board in all subject areas. And then because we didn't have PVAS at the high school. Wanted it, but it wasn't available. Anyway, those are things that need to continue to develop.
Right. Let's try to kind of wrap this one up and wrap up the night, because I was trying to shut this thing down by 9. So if we can figure out what our takeaways are here, and then move on to the last one.
I think, at least for me, the takeaway in terms of all these evaluations would be, how do you incorporate the superintendent goals into the administrative goals? How do you incorporate administrative goals into classified and professional goals? And, if this is our opportunity, again, I guess what I would want to know in terms of the professional goals, 410, what are the state requirements? What are are there any contractual requirements in terms of how we evaluate these people? And then as a board, what do we want to do in terms of their goals? Because if we write our policy the way we want and we incorporate the state goals into those things, then it just becomes an issue of contractually, when the contract comes up again, modifying the contract to reflect the policy. So that
Right.
at the end of the day, it's not the contract determining how we're doing things, it's our policy that's determining how we're doing things.
Yeah, and
It's
I would
like the tail
never,
wagging the dog.
I would never recommend that you put anything regarding professional staff goal setting and evaluation in their contract. It should be the domain of the board and the
Right,
superintendent.
Right.
Sure.
So I'm not boned up on the contract, so I just want to make sure that
Right.
whatever's in, there's nothing in the contract that would dictate to
Prohibit,
us what
right.
we can and can't do here.
No, we got some work to do on this one.
Okay. And then, the feedback you guys can give us in terms of how you put all that in here, and what other benchmarks can we use for evaluating performance. I think that would be helpful.
Yep. Andrew, you and I are saying the same thing. I would just say it a little bit differently, just coming from my mind, and that is that we the board, along with you, Dr. Otto, should and will put together your goals that are in the absolute best interest of this whole school district.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's everyone else's job to carve out those goals and divvy them out to administrators, to teachers, to execute on those goals.
What you're
They
describing-
should all be your goals. They all start at yours.
Right.
It's not a whole new set, like Andrew said. We need to make sure that your all-encompassing goals are trickled down to everyone else.
That's called strategic planning.
Yeah.
But they get evaluated
They get
on how
evaluated
well
on it,
they
right.
execute on the goals
Right.
that were given to you by the board.
Right.
Correct.
And if they
they're-
fail,
if they fail,
you
they
fail.
get an unsatisfactory. You get an unsatisfactory, they get an unsatisfactory, and that's what shareholders do to CEOs. Their boards of companies give a CEO an objective, and he delivers that all the way down to the employee in the line. And if it's not happening, that CEO is getting fired. Those employees are getting fired. I mean.
it makes everyone a stakeholder. I mean,
Right.
if the teacher's not doing well, you're directly impacted because they're messing up your goal. So everyone becomes part of the solution there.
And really, for a teacher to come unprepared for school, that should be a complete unsatisfactory. They're paid to be there to teach. I cannot go to work and not do what I'm supposed to do, or I don't get paid. I mean, they should always be on their game. I don't see any excuse for them to be off their game when they have plenty of time to look at their plan it out.
Couldn't agree with you more.
So
All right,
Okay.
last one.
This is boilerplate,
Physical exams.
Employees are all required to have them.
Yeah, my only question with this is who is exempt from this? Just
Nobody.
you and the business manager?
No, I have to do it too.
Oh, you're in a different
Yes.
policy?
Well, I don't. Yeah, maybe you ought to put that in the superintendent's policy, but hiring.
'Cause
No
this is-
one can work in the state of Pennsylvania.
You've got one for classified, you got one for professional, and you got one for administrative.
You could
So the
include-
business manager and you are the only two out of this, right? I mean,
We could add that wording in there.
not that I'm telling you had to. If you didn't,
Well, no, I
just
actually
wanted to
had
know
to.
who's excluded.
Nobody.
No one's excluded.
No one's excluded.
Who's the advisory health board?
Where is that mentioned?
At the bottom of
At
each
the
one.
bottom, it says there can be a re-examination in accordance with the regulations of the advisory health board, which shall be provided by the district.
That has to do with the TB test, but I don't know what those words mean.
I was just wondering, who's the board? What
Yeah.
regulations do they have? And
I'd have to check the regs to see what that means.
is that something from the state?
Yeah, I believe that is because it's in each one of them.
Okay.
My guess is it's probably in the school health code, because there's actually a separate school health code. But suffice it to say, no one's allowed to be employed without a physical exam. That's a statutory requirement. And that's where we stopped for this round.
Big chunk. Okay.
So biggies are 308.
Well, I've
410s,
got my notes on that. I'll start working on that.
transfer.
Bill and I will compare our notes tomorrow, and we'll start
302.
moving on these.
Sounds great. If there's nothing else, we'll adjourn.
Connor,
All right.
I'll let you know how I make out with the New York Times.
Yeah, can't wait for that.
All right, I'll give you a buzz tomorrow.
Meeting adjourned.
All right.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Fine.